10 years ago, I told her I loved her. She said she felt the same, but we were too young. We'd wait. We'd both get into the Ivy League, and then we'd figure it out. A few days later, she climbed into a rich kid's car. I ran to stop her. She got out, looked at me and said, "Cold as stone. Your love is worthless. Richard Gilbert can make me somebody. Even if all he wants is to play with me and throw me away, I'd rather be his toy living in luxury than be loved by someone whose love isn't worth a thing." I stood there for a long time, frozen, until Richard told his driver, "Run him over. We'll file an insurance claim." The roar of the Bentley's engine turned my legs to jelly. I collapsed onto the pavement. Richard got out, one arm draped around her, and looked down at me. Poor people. She gave me one long look and said, "Forget about me." 10 years later, I came back to the city as a rising force in the business world. A class reunion happened to be booked at my private club, and I saw her again. I'd picked up Obsidian Club when I first came back to Brookhaven. I needed somewhere to host the city's power players, so profit was never the point. The place existed to filter 9-figure net worth or real political weight, otherwise you didn't get through the door. Today's guest was a special one, Lucius Donaldson, the senior official overseeing Brookhaven's economic development. He didn't drink alcohol, only tea, and nothing expensive at that. A few minutes of easy conversation, and we'd locked in a project north of 10 billion. He took a call from City Hall. It wasn't my place to hover, so I stepped out of the private room. That was when my assistant came clicking down the corridor. "Mr. Swanson, a developer's son just showed up in the Lakeview suite downstairs. Worth your time?" Sheila's voice was sweet and honeyed, her tone soft. I glanced at the private room where Lucius was still on his call, hesitated a moment and said, "Sure, let's go see." Lucius's calls usually ran half an hour at minimum. I couldn't just stand out here waiting. And if Sheila had come to tell me in person, whoever was downstairs carried some weight. Worth a look. I headed downstairs to the Lakeview suite with a decent bottle of wine and knocked. "Come in." Someone called from inside. I pulled the door open and walked in with a smile that was polite but distant. Before I could say a word, I stopped cold. People I knew, people I'd known half my life, and who looked like strangers now. The seat directly facing the door was the head of the table, and the person sitting there, naturally, was the one with the most clout. Richard Gilbert. 10 years had passed, but I still thought about it sometimes. The moment that Bentley's engine sent me crumpling to the ground. I still remembered those 3 words of his. Poor people. And then I saw her. Bridget Pruitt. The girl who once told me my love was worthless, was sitting right beside Richard now, a porcelain pretty little girl cradled in her arms. Later I left the capital, assuming she was still there building her career. I never expected her to have come back to Brookhaven too. "Mommy, Daisy wants shrimp." The porcelain pretty little girl spoke up suddenly. "And she was married? Had she married Richard?" Richard said, "Come here, Daisy. Daddy'll get you some." He glanced at me first when he said it, a deliberate little provocation, then turned his gaze to Bridget and kept it there. "Old classmate, it's been what, 10 years? I heard you got into an Ivy League school back in the day. How'd you end up a waiter after all these years?" Richard set a piece of shrimp on the little girl's plate. When he looked back at me, his face was pure mockery. "Almost 30 and still waiting tables. You're supposed to be a man, Tony. Aren't you embarrassed? At least work your way up to shift lead." The table erupted in laughter the second he finished. Same as 10 years ago, everyone at this table had the same reflex. Kiss Richard Gilbert's ass on cue. The logic was simple. Whoever Richard went after, they went after too. Show loyalty, earn favor. Back in school, that favor might have been a pack of cigarettes tossed their way. Now, maybe a decent job. People did what they had to do to get by. Nothing shameful about that. I could understand it. I smiled and set the bottle down, looking at Richard. "I'm just here to drop off a bottle. Enjoy your evening." I turned to leave. As for Bridget, I didn't look at her. There was no point. She was married with a child. What was there to dwell on? Nothing to hold on to. "Hey Tony, Richard didn't say you could go." Grayson Malone stood up from his seat near the door. He'd always been Richard's #1 lapdog. 10 years ago, and clearly still now. Otherwise he wouldn't be sitting by the door. That spot made it easy to run Richard's